Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to the first of this year's applications webinars. My name's Katie, I'm part of the AYO staff team. And tonight I'm joined by three incredible panelists who are here to answer your questions about being a part of the Australian Youth Orchestra. Thanks so much to all of you at home for tuning in this evening. This webinar is open to everyone, so whether you're a parent or a teacher who's helping a young musician to prepare, a musician considering applying to AYO for the first time, or someone who has attended AYO programs in the past, your input and questions are very welcome. Thank you to those of you who submitted queries through our website. If anyone has any further questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A function if you're watching via Zoom, or in the comments section if you're streaming on Facebook. We'll do our best to get through as many as we can. I can see that people are still joining us, so while everybody gets settled, I'll introduce you to our three panelists: AYO Chief Executive Officer Colin Cornish, AYO Bassoon Tutor Jackie Newcomb, and AYO Violist Aidan Filshie. All three of them have participated in AYO programs, some more recently than others, and each of them will be able to offer their own unique perspective on the Australian Youth Orchestra experience. So panel, perhaps each of you could start by telling our audience a little bit about yourselves, how you've been involved with the AYO community and what you do now. Colin, would you like to start?
Oh, hi Katie, hi Jackie, hi Aidan, and good evening everyone, or good afternoon. So as you can see, I currently have a great job, which is the Chief Executive of the Australian Youth Orchestra. Half of my life has been involved in this amazing organisation, and I had the great privilege of auditioning and eventually being selected for a place in the orchestra when I was in my teens, and attending some of the music camps. We have less programs. We have more programs now than we did when I was that age, but I did participate as a violinist. I then went on to become a viola player and played professionally with the Australian Chamber Orchestra predominantly. After 10 or so years doing that, I moved into administration, worked for the ABC and the Melbourne Symphony, and back to the Australian Youth Orchestra. So I've had quite a long involvement and appreciate still very much the process of, I guess, looking for the opportunities that AYO offers and then competing with others to get in, and doing it a number of times and finding tons of friends when I do it. So that's probably more than enough from me.
Yeah, thank you, Colin. Let's hear from Jackie next.
Hi everyone, my name's Jackie Newcomb. I am a bassoonist and contrabassoonist, and since 2009 I have been the principal contrabassoonist with the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra. My first involvement with the Australian Youth Orchestra was attending National Music Camp back in 2004. And I attended it every year from 2004 to 2007. And I was a member of the Australian Youth Orchestra from 2005 to 2007. And my last season was playing principal bassoon with the AYO for the 2007 European tour. I've also had the great privilege of tutoring National Music Camp in recent years, which has been an enormous honour for me, and I think that's enough from me.
Brilliant, thanks Jackie. And Aidan.
Hi everyone, I'm Aidan. I'm a uni student living up in Sydney. I'm studying viola at the Conservatorium here, and I guess similar to Colin, I also started on violin and did a few AYO programs, starting with National Music Camp in 2014 on violin, and have done plenty of camps since, done a bunch of seasons and young symphonist programs, a whole spectrum of programs. And a few years ago, I transitioned to playing viola as well, and have been on the international tour, similar to Jackie, on viola. So yeah, it's really cool to actually hear the different bios and how this experiences are similar, but different eras, and then how it's come full circle, and now Jackie's been a tutor on some of the camps that I've been on. So yeah, it's a great community here.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, everyone, for those intros. Let's get stuck into some questions from our community. Our first question is very broad, and it is, what does AYO do? So Colin, for anyone listening who's applying for the first time, perhaps you could give us just a brief overview on the nature of our programs.
Okay, so what does AYO do? Australian Youth Orchestra was founded in 1948 by two music teachers who wanted to bring together their students from different parts of the country. Each of these students had a great opportunity to learn from a teacher. They were playing orchestra with their peers in each state, so people they knew very well. They had very little chance to actually connect with others who perhaps were better than them, older than them, younger than them, just different. And they brought them together. And that was the very first national music camp. And that's really what we do, is we create opportunities with the ingredients of challenging repertoire, inspiring teachers and conductors and tutors, create an environment which is really intense. So it's comfortable, but it's intense. So you work all day on music, and you turn up and you meet others that you end up sitting next to, playing music with, having lunch with, having dinner with, playing cards with, doing a whole lot of things where you learn a lot about yourself and you learn from others. And what happens is, through these short courses, so they're designed to fit in throughout the year for people who are obviously still studying at schools, studying at university, music and other subjects, and it's designed to fit in amongst these other programs. So when you come to an AYO program, it is intense for a reason, because we might only have 1 week, 2 weeks, or in the case of, say, an overseas tour, 4 weeks, where we cram in a whole lot of fantastic experiences. And the idea is that you come out of this with an inspiration because of those ingredients, and you want to come back. And most people either come back because they got in the first time, or they keep auditioning until they get in, and then they stay on this pathway which can take them, you know, really and into their profession. And I think as we go throughout the evening, you will hear stories of at least the people on the panel meeting people the very first time they arrived at one of these courses, and then having a connection for perhaps years as a friend and as a colleague and as a support network forever. And so if you're a person who goes to a school where music is not essentially considered the ultimate measure of success or achievement, you might be amongst sport or maths or science, and they are the achievements that are heralded. Or you might play the tuba in a town where nobody else plays the tuba, or the contrabassoon. This is the place where you can meet the people who also do that, who love listening to music, and usually will change your life.
Great, thank you, Colin. That was a good answer. So once people have read and explored our programs, the next big step is to submit an application. Jackie, I'm going to ask you our next question, which is, what inspired you to apply to AYO for the first time?
Yep, I'm from Sydney originally, and I grew up playing in the Sydney Youth Orchestra and SBS Youth Orchestra, and that's where I first became aware of the Australian Youth Orchestra, and that there was this organisation and this community that brought together musicians from all over Australia. And my two greatest passions are playing music and travelling, and for me this was just the ultimate goal, to be involved in the Australian Youth Orchestra. And so from my first year studying at the Sydney Con, studying bassoon, I decided that it was my goal to get into National Music Camp and Australian Youth Orchestra. And so from first year, I applied every year.
The rest is history.
Yes.
And our next question is actually along a similar line, but perhaps feel free, all of you, to weigh in on this one. What advice would you give to a young musician considering applying for AYO?
Well, I think really you just have to throw your hat into the ring. You don't really know what you're missing out on until you've actually experienced some of it. And that was certainly the story of my first experience with AYO. I did the audition because my violin teacher at the time suggested that it was a great thing. She had been through National Music Camp back in her time, and said that it would be a worthy experience. And so I just auditioned, not really knowing what it was, what I was getting myself into. And I was really, really fortunate enough to actually be accepted into National Music Camp that first time, and I got absolutely hooked. But really it comes back to just apply. Like you don't know what you're getting yourself into, and it may just be the best thing that's going to happen to you. So yeah.
Just go for it, give it a go. And any other thoughts, Jackie?
Got one more little thing. Tick every box you're eligible for, because all the programs offer something completely different and completely exciting, and you just literally don't know all the different paths that can open up to you when you're involved in any of the chamber music camp, professional development, orchestral programs. There are so many programs. Yeah,
that's great advice, Jackie. And it is just the one audition for all of those programs. So yeah, you're right. Just tick everything that you are eligible for is our advice. We've had a couple of people asking about the application process. So Aidan, as you've applied yourself over the past few years, I might give these questions to you. How did you choose which programs to apply for, and can you apply for more than one? We've kind of answered this, but yeah.
Jackie's touched on this already. Just tick every box. One other thing that I was thinking about in that answer that Jackie gave is that if you do tick all the boxes, you get all the excerpts to learn, which actually is a great thing. So there's normally, well, from the auditions that I've done on a string instrument, there's normally 6 excerpts, and there's 4 excerpts that everyone has to do, and then 2 additional ones if you're going for seasons or the fellowship programs or chamber players. But really, you should do all 6, because it's just about building up this bank of excerpts and audition experience that you just accumulate over the years, and eventually you start coming back to excerpts. And it's yeah, really beneficial to have amassed that wealth of experience over the years.
Yeah, you're right, Aidan. Experience will never go to waste. Our next question is about auditions. Colin, I might ask you to answer this one. What are the audition panel looking for in our auditions?
Right, okay. Well, there are some specific criteria that we can share with you on our website. The audition requirements page on the website does outline what people are looking for as the audition panelists, and the assessment is generally around the areas of accuracy, beauty of sound, so tone production, precision in terms of your rhythm, and intonation. So good intonation, good tuning, good rhythm, the tone or the sound that you make, and accuracy. And we appreciate and understand that some of those elements are influenced by the recording situation. And I think there is some additional information that will be provided about how to make the most of the recorded audition opportunity. But there's also some advice, I think, that's very, very important about preparation. That is about learning, when you're playing a sample of an orchestral piece, understanding the context for that excerpt. So listening to the piece of music, just understanding a bit more about where that comes from in the piece. So some, obvious things are to play at the right speed or tempo, and to really take notice of what's written on the page in terms of dynamics and articulations. Those kind of things, I think, are really important in a competitive process. And then in the end, really, it's critical that one takes this seriously as something that you do have to prepare well for. It is a competitive process that's attractive to a lot of people. And I certainly know from experience that preparation, that presentation, and that, you know, the investment that you make into that process really comes through, no matter whether you're doing it in your garage or your hallway or your bathroom or a recording studio. So those elements of preparation and attention to detail, and to really hear what sound you're making and sound is being recorded, all of those, the attention to that will really pay off for you.
Great, thank you.
But I do definitely have a look at the information on our website, which goes to the audition requirements and the assessment criteria and some tips. And then I think, Katie, there will be some additional information about recording provided at some stage.
In 2 weeks today, actually, we'll have another webinar that will discuss all of that in great detail. So make sure that you're tuning in for that. Our next question also relates to our fourth webinar, which is all based upon the technical requirements of your audition and the recording side of things. But we might just briefly touch on it now, because we've had a question come through, which is, do you have any tips on preparing for a recorded audition? Now, Aidan, given that you actually did one of these last year, do you have any top tips? And could you maybe share your experience doing that?
Yeah, I mean, Colin gave a really great outline into how to just generally prepare for an audition. But in terms of the difference between a live audition versus a recorded audition, I think it's just a mentality thing in the end. And ultimately, you want the preparation to be as similar as possible. It's easy to feel like it's less serious or a scale down in commitment when you're recording, because you don't have the panel sitting there, you don't have a set date. But actually, it can be really great to put in a set date, make yourself work for that deadline, practice full runs as though you're going to be playing it for a panel, practice recording and listening back to yourself, and be critical of that, just so that you're really being thorough with the process and you're not kind of taking an easier approach because you know that you can make multiple takes. In the end, it's when you do record, it's often the first few takes that often end up being the best ones because you're freshest then. So yeah, try and keep a good mentality of setting that date and then executing.
Yeah, it's great advice. Thank you. Let's go to Jackie for this next question. What advice would you give to applicants finding out their results?
I would say, no matter what happens, don't give up. The first 2 years I auditioned for the AYO and National Music Camp, my results were that I didn't even make the reserve list, which was at the time quite disappointing, but I knew that I was gaining audition experience with every year that I applied. And I also knew that the only way to get into the AYO is to apply, keep practicing, continue to develop audition skills. These are skills that are really important for life, whether you're following an orchestral career or a performance career or any kind of career. Putting yourself out there and just applying is really important. And yeah, does that answer that?
Yeah, I think it does, absolutely. Thank you, Jackie. I think maybe let's move on now to talk more specifically about AYO programs and what to expect in 2022. We'll look at some of the concerns that young musicians might have when coming along to AYO for the first time and the specifics of programs. Actually, Jackie, I might come back to you for this one. As someone who's tutored at AYO many times, I thought you could perhaps talk us through the kinds of things that we do on an AYO program.
There's such a broad range of programs, and we've touched on it already, but I'll just go over them. That's National Music Camp and orchestral seasons, chamber music and professional development. And I learned something different from every single type of AYO program I participated in every single year. And for example, National Music Camp is where I learned to play the contrabassoon, and it's also where I discovered that I love playing it. I wouldn't have had that kind of intense time with it and learnt that I loved it so much if it weren't for music camp. It's also a place, all the programs are a place where you learn, often you learn how efficiently professional orchestras and chamber groups rehearse, and rehearsal periods for AYO programs are a lot shorter and more intense than what you generally experience in a school or a tertiary or state-based youth orchestra. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Jackie. We've had one question come through, which Colin, I might send your way. How is AYO, so the Australian Youth Orchestra, different to other youth orchestras and camps?
Well, I can give an answer to that, but potentially both Jackie and Aidan can add to it, given that they will have experienced it. But we work very closely with all the major state and territory youth orchestra organisations in Australia, because many players who come to AYO programs are involved in those programs in the capital cities, but also in regional areas. And our intention is to build upon the work that you do on a regular basis there. Perhaps the most, the strongest difference is the fact that some of those programs have a very regular rehearsal time where you go back on perhaps a weekly basis, or you do a block of time every term, and then it involves working with often the same conductor for a period of time. And as I said earlier on, with the same, with the people from your area. So the AYO programs are designed to try and squeeze in a whole term or a whole year of activity into one short period. We aim to do more than just orchestral playing. So chamber music has a large proportion of the time allocated, so playing in small groups. And then we have sessions where you might learn about reed making if you're a wind player, or you know, posture, or performance anxiety, a whole range of elements, career choices, hearing from people who have made decisions about their study choices and then their career choices. Yeah, so I think it's predominantly the fact that we only have a week, or we have 2 weeks when you're there, and we have people from all different areas. So there is a sense of, you know, that sense of familiarity isn't there. And we try and squeeze out a really high quality product in a really short period of time. And by doing that, individuals climb mountains they didn't think they could climb. And then they go back to where they live or where they study, and they're contributing to their local youth orchestra and their university in a very different way, because they've actually climbed that mountain. So Jackie or Aidan, do you want to add anything from your experience as to how you describe that difference?
I've got something. It's not quite about describing the difference per se, but more about my experience in that I actually was never part of one of the state youth orchestras. And I just want to speak to the mindset that could potentially disadvantage you in any way. And I definitely came across this after I did my first national music camp, and I started wondering, oh, should I have been doing these state youth orchestras the rest of the time? But because yeah, I guess, like as Colin mentioned it back at the start of the webinar, like I was at one of the schools where the music program wasn't necessarily as comprehensive or as highlighted as some of the sport, and so I never had time on the weekends. I was always playing Saturday sport rather than rehearsing in a youth orchestra. So in terms of the orchestral experience and all the musical experiences that AYO provide, I think they're so comprehensive, and even though they're condensed into intensives, you're learning a lot in those time periods, and they're spaced out throughout the year so that they kind of provide these milestones of learning, I guess, as you attend each program. So you're always learning new things, and you never really stagnate, I guess.
Yeah, that's great to hear. This actually does lead quite nicely into our next question, which Aidan, I might ask you to respond to. And obviously a lot of people do go to their state youth orchestras and have met each other before the program that they're going to, the AYO program that they're going to begins. But this question's from a parent, and the question is, did you find it easy to meet people on AYO programs, and did you know anybody before you went?
Yeah, I knew no one. I knew no one going into my first camp. But so many people are in the same boat. I met a bunch of people on the very first day of camp who also knew no one, and we quickly became friends. And actually some of my best friends in the musical community I've met on AYO programs. So yeah, you can always bet on the fact that there's going to be plenty of new participants each year, as well as people who are coming back to friends who they've been doing programs with year after year. But the thing is that it's a very welcoming community. Everyone's there with the same mindset. Everyone's there doing the same thing. So it's very easy to make friends. Yeah.
That's good. And Jackie, how about you? Did you have a similar experience?
Well, coming from a place where I was heavily involved in the state-based youth orchestras, I had quite a network already, but just from my state. And the thing that I loved about being involved in the AYO was that my network opened up to the whole of Australia, and now I have many of my most loved colleagues and people that I play with are friends that I met in AYO programs, and I really feel like it bridged the gap there between what the state-based youth orchestras can offer and a professional career path. And it also meant that when I entered the professional field, I had already a very strong network of musicians who were friends I'd met in the AYO programs.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I've got a question here that I might forward to you, Colin. When will we find out the locations of the 2022 programs?
Okay, sure. Before I answer that, I just want to add one thing to what both Jackie and Aidan said, and talking especially to those parents and young people who perhaps will be apprehensive, wondering, if I do get in, will I want to go? Will I be good enough? And how scared will I be? And will I be on my own? I think all of those questions are questions that almost everybody asks themselves. Even if you're an extrovert that's going with a bit of a gang because you've got, they've got the friends that you're bringing with you, or you're somebody who doesn't. And I have deliberately, because of my own experience, feeling a bit like that when I first went and taking some time, deliberately tried to involve people and processes, so tutors, but also our support staff, in a way that, without smothering people, we are on the lookout for people who are feeling like that. So when you arrive, we try and welcome you in and link you up with others, and just make sure that those who are very confident and have been there for a while are also looking out for others. So I think I can honestly say that it is a very open and warm environment that's equal, and it's not one where those who are turning up for the first time will be totally on their own. We are very well aware of it as an organisation, and we're actually looking out for it, because we do know that it only takes one conversation, one or two rehearsals, or even one program, and that that apprehension is gone and it's replaced with confidence and looking forward to the next time. So it's a very deliberate approach to make sure that we can really support everyone who wants to come and give it a go. In terms of the other detailed information about locations and conductors and tutors and repertoire that we often would put out at the same time we call for applications, there's no surprise that at the moment any organisation like ours that is trying to plan activities that involve performances, that involve cross-border travel, that involve international travel in the case of visiting artists, it is incredibly difficult to have any level of certainty. And for those that have been involved for the last 2 years, there's a bit of a trail of programs that have been cancelled and postponed, waiting to be postponed and rescheduled. And right now, with the lockdowns and the outbreaks in Sydney and then Melbourne and elsewhere, we felt the best thing was to actually have these dates in place, commit to the programs, and have a bit more time to be 100% sure that the locations and some of the other elements like conductors and repertoire are going to, I guess, be more certain than we could be a few weeks ago. So we're going to release that information just before the offers for programs come out. And I understand that's towards the end of October. So for anybody who auditions and gets an opportunity, there will be a chance to consider your offer with the information about where will I need to go, you know, the venues and the other personnel that are involved in the repertoire. So we'll be working to do that, and we'll be keeping our fingers crossed that as much as possible that we plan for will be able to take place.
Great, thank you, Colin. Now that we've explored the programs themselves, let's take a look at some of the more general questions about AYO and our wider community. AYO alumni can be found all over the world. They're following a multitude of career paths, and what makes this community so special is that these people are still very connected to one another, as we've discussed already. Our first question, I might ask you, Jackie, to answer this one. How has your time at AYO helped to shape your career as a musician?
Well, I think the biggest thing about being involved in the AYO is the community and the network of musical friends that it provides. I have found that the people who I've met through the different programs through the years have popped up in my life in very different places over and over again and provided me with opportunities and career pathways that I would never otherwise have had, and I'm very grateful to that. It's being involved in the music camp as a tutor has been one of my most treasured career highlights. Being able to give back to that experience of being a student at the National Music Camp from the tutor perspective is just, I don't know where I'm going with this, but basically it's just really, it's ingrained in me how important music is and what an important community this is.
Yeah, it plays a key role in a lot of people's careers, no matter what they are. And actually, we've had a question that's come through that's quite almost a flip reverse of what we've just talked about, which is, do you have to want to become a musician to attend an AYO program? Would anyone like to take this one?
Yeah, I will, because I didn't want to become a musician. I had my heart set on the science path, going into engineering. And I existed that way all through school. And despite doing many AYO programs, which I loved, I still held that mentality until I got to university, really. And then I switched paths. But I loved the AYO programs despite not wanting to become a professional musician at the time, just because I loved coming back program after program to make music with friends around Australia. I had this, as Jackie alluded to, like there was this big network of musical friends, and yeah, that was just a fantastic experience. And yeah, it's something that even if I wasn't to have chosen the music path, I still would have taken those experiences and cherished them as I went forward had I not gone into music. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the case with so many of our alumni. They find that their AYO experience, it impacts the rest of their career, whether it's music or whether it's not music at all. And yeah, that community that we've spoken about is key in that. And our next question actually is around our community. Over the past year, obviously the whole musical community has certainly had to support each other through some challenging times. It would be good to hear from each of you on our next one, which is, how do you stay inspired in post-COVID conditions? Jackie, would you like to take this one?
Post-COVID conditions. Sure. Okay. I stay inspired by keeping in touch with what all my colleagues and friends and also musicians from around the world who I've never met, but I admire. I keep in touch with what projects they're doing, and that inspires me to continue to practice. And I also stay inspired by playing chamber music with friends and people who are living close in my little bubble. And that for me is a really important thing for keeping me inspired, because music and playing an orchestral instrument is all about playing with other people, not just practicing by myself. And even if I am playing with them over the web, not necessarily in person, that is just so uplifting for the spirits and also inspiring for continuing to develop my playing.
Yeah, brilliant. We've got perhaps just one more question, and then I'll have a look at some that have come through the Q&A. So I'm going to put it to all of you, actually. This is free for everyone. What has been your favourite memory of an AYO program? Aidan, how about you?
There's so many to choose from. That's a really hard question. But oh, yeah, there's just so many that have kind of amassed over the years. Like going back to my very first camp, the orchestra that I was in was conducted by the late Richard Gill, which I feel very, very privileged and grateful that I was able to have that opportunity. That's like really what I guess kickstarted my real passion for music, or I guess awoke the passion for music. Yeah, along the way, there's been the international tour that I've been a part of as well. I mean, fantastic to go overseas with a bunch of friends from Australia and then experience the European musical culture. Like, talk about broadening horizons and exposing you to the professional music scene, I guess. And then, yeah, even things like playing in advanced chamber at National Music Camp. Like, there's just a whole bunch of new experiences that I managed to keep having on AYO programs, and they're all so fun. So yeah, I can't give an answer to what my favorite memory is, but there are some. Yeah,
we'll let you off the hook. That's okay. How about you, Jackie? Do you have any highlights?
I have two that I can't choose between. They are the European tour in 2007, playing in those incredible halls, including the Concertgebouw. I mean, what a way to see the Concertgebouw by playing on the stage, being involved in that. And the rest of the tour was just incredible too. And I think the other favourite memory was being involved in the Wind Quintet, Young Australian Concert Artists, I believe it was called back then, YACA. we toured to Cairns, and I think what was so special about that program was not just that it was so intense being with just 4 other musicians and working on the wind quintets together, but also the tutors who tutored us, Peter Luff and Paul Dean from the Southern Cross Soloists. They really opened my eyes to the alternative career paths that you can create for yourself. It's not just about orchestral playing. It's music can take you in so many directions, and often it's what you make for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you all actually for sharing all your experiences with everyone here tonight. We've had some further questions coming through while we've been talking, so let's take a look at some of those now. We're trying to get through as many as we can over the next 10 minutes or so. Colin, I might forward this one to you. I've got a parent asking, they've got a son who's a young aspiring harpist, and they're asking, what is the earliest age for applicants?
Wow, that's a trick question for me, but I do believe there is no minimum age for some of the programs.
For the Australian Youth Orchestra, yes.
And then for some of the other programs, like Young Symphonists, the age I think is 12. So in general, like in practice, so that those guidelines are on the program details, and each one is a bit different. But when it comes to the AYO, there is no minimum age. But with experience, it's around about 13, 12 or 13 that we have the youngest person, and then the average age generally for those older programs works out to be somewhere between 19 and 21. Yeah,
I think that's about right. Our next question is, how does accommodation work on AYO programs?
Well, perhaps I will give a general answer to that. Each program has a different set of requirements, and as you will see, some programs travel is provided, other programs participants cover their travel and arrive at the location. The program accommodation will generally be anywhere between for some of the Young Symphonist program, it could be a boarding school type place where we're using, say, the facilities of a school that has a decent music program, but also very good boarding facilities, including catering. There will be other programs where we may use hotel accommodation, apartment hotel accommodation. There are also university colleges that we use. So the National Music Camp, which is often held in Adelaide, we accommodate everybody in individual rooms at St Mark's College in North Adelaide. And there is dining facilities there, but we also cater up at the university. Some programs, we also provide meals through an allowance. It just depends if it's more of a tour or a season type activity. The scale of the program. Some of the fellowship programs have only 9 participants. So it really is quite a broad range of activities in terms of the accommodation and the catering.
Yeah,
and I would encourage anybody who has a specific question about a program is very welcome to contact us in the AYO offices or telephones or wherever we're working, and just talk through, I want to apply for this program. Can you just give me a sense of what that would be like?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Colin. Maybe I'll, Jackie and Aidan, you can probably both answer this one. We've got somebody asking, how often do you practice, every week or every day?
Would Aidan like to go first?
Nowadays at uni, at the con, it's most days. But certainly when I was first applying for the AYO programs, it was whenever I could fit it in. I juggled a lot of things at school, and it was when I got time. Some weeks that was many days per week, some weeks that was only a handful, but it's really working with what you've got and trying to make the most of that time available. But yes, nowadays it's most days.
I find my approach in general is that I am a project-based practicer. So I will ramp up the intensity when I've got an audition coming up or a big program, a difficult program, and I'll ease off a little bit more when things are cruising a bit more. But as a professional musician in a symphony orchestra, I find that I'm playing most days, and whether it's through rehearsals or preparing for rehearsals. So I just like the project-based approach because it means that there's always variety, and I am ready for the projects when they are big and when they're happening.
Great, thank you. I've got a question here which, Colin, I might ask you to answer. People often do AYO programs for many years. What is the chance of a newcomer getting accepted?
Okay, yeah, so you probably hear some stories, certainly from the people here tonight, that have applied and been accepted and then continued on for a number of years. And whilst there is a bit of a 3-year cycle, for some people it's actually much longer. Every year, because everybody auditions, no matter whether you've been in before, everybody is considered in the same way, and the fact that you've been involved before has no bearing at all on the outcome. There is always a percentage each year of people who are new to the program, and they might be beginning their cycle of, say, 3 or 4 years at that stage, and then as more people leave that cycle, more people come in. So every year, I think we have around about 20% of people who are first timers. And in some programs, that's actually going to be a much higher number. It just depends which program and where we are, but don't consider that this is something that if you're a first timer, you're being considered right alongside on the same playing field as somebody who's been in the program for the last 3 years. It's a fresh start every year.
Great, thank you, Colin. We've had a couple of questions coming through from percussionists, and we were in actually a similar position this time last year. One of the questions is, if we can't access auxiliary or mallet percussion due to lockdown, what should we do? The answer, I can answer this actually, is that we will be in touch over the coming days just to help you out with that issue. We're aware that that affects quite a lot of people. So I believe by the end of this week, we'll be emailing everybody who's in that scenario, and we will be offering an extension of time to help you get your audition prepared without too many issues. Our next question is, how long do you have to prepare and learn the excerpts? So the excerpts are actually available as soon as you have paid your application fee and submitted your application, and they are due on either the 14th or 16th of September. But perhaps Aidan or Jackie, I might ask you to just talk through how long it generally takes you to prepare audition excerpts, how long you would spend working on them. Aidan, how about you?
It depends how much time you're given. But you're given so much time with the AYO application, so it's actually a blessing because you can really get into the detail of the excerpts. But my advice would be to start work on them early. Really do all the background work. Colin was talking about it earlier. Listen to the pieces. Really do some score study. Try and get into the details. Practice it regularly, and 2 to 3 weeks, they'll be in good shape most likely. But sometimes you don't have that much time. So since you are given a bunch of time with AYO, yeah, make the most of it.
Yeah, still plenty of time. So as soon as you've got that application submitted, you can get started. So yeah, we recommend getting those in as soon as you can. I think on that note, as we were meant to be finishing at 7:45, we'll maybe bring our webinar to a close tonight. Thank you to everyone at home for tuning in this evening. For anyone who submitted a question that we didn't get to, we'll be responding to these over email over the coming days. Or if you still have further questions about applying for AYO, then please do get in touch with us by email at info@ayo.com.au, or by just giving us a call at the office on 1300 668 500. Over the coming weeks, we'll be presenting 3 more webinars on audition preparation, our arts administration and composition programs, and how to record your video auditions. So head to the AYO website for details on those and to submit any questions that you'd like us to address. And we'll look forward to seeing you all there. Finally, just a huge thank you to our 3 brilliant panelists, Colin, Jackie, and Aidan, for answering all of your questions this evening. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all from us, everyone. Have a lovely evening.